Well, hope everybody's doing good tonight. BT, ninth amendment party.com. Just sitting here getting ready to start. Hope everybody's week's been good so far. We have a lot of stuff here going on here, not just in our community, but around the nation. And so tonight, again, we're going to be looking at South Carolina and looking at some of the areas here of election and what's happening here with our uh, endorsement from Donald Trump for the new governor for our state and really what's taking place. And so before we start and really start going into things, I'd like to go ahead and read this here because again, we're at a apex in time right now. And so when I say an apex, it's a change and it's a big change. And the change that's occurring is the old political parties of the Democrat system as well as the Republican system have been brought to the forefront for the American people, we the people, to be able to take a look at and actually see what's transpired over all these years of within our lifespan, so to speak. You know, I'm a baby boomer, and many of you are, and there's some of you who aren't. But you know, what we've seen in our lifetime has, come from, let's say, the '60s. Okay, some of you might be from the '50s. But let's just say from the 60s on, okay? Because again, that's when a lot of the changes in government really took place, okay? So in 1967, the government changed from a true municipality all the way to a full corporation status. And that was done through the states, and they actually met in 67. And what happened was all the governors came together, and the federal people, okay, came to the governors and said, hey, if we go ahead and implement this full corporation status across our nation, we can generate more revenue for you guys to do whatever you'd like to do in every county, every state, and across the nation. And so we can help, with this infrastructure and all these other areas and be able to just tax and tax and tax and tax and people will just have to accept it. So in 67, that was really when the crisis really took effect in our nation. When we look at it as it affected us on the judicial branch, it also affected us in the manner of common law courts, because prior to 1967, we had what was referred to as a justice of the peace. And the justice of the peace was a true common law Article 3 in equity courtroom. Okay. And so there had to be an injury. The state could not be a party to a claim. They had to have, a form of some injury to a man or woman, son or daughter, piece of property, something of this nature. And so instead of that, they brought in a hardline color of law. And color of law is the judicial area, which the law enforcement in every city, county, and state and national aspect utilize. And color of law smells like law, looks like law, pretends to be supporting the Constitution when in fact it's part of the bar, the British accredited registered system where attorneys are participating. And these attorneys are actually foreign agents. And just like they're a foreign agent, all the elected officials from the state become foreign agents, okay? Governors, lieutenant governors, attorney generals, Senate, commissioners, all these aspects, okay? And so a foreign agent is someone who is not part of the original Constitution, not part of the original United States of America. And so as I read this, I want you to kind of take some time. This is, in the Declaration of Independence. So this is the appendix. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and assume among the powers of the earth and separate an equal station to which laws of nature and of nature's guide entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. See, and that's what we're going through right now is we're going through a separation within the political party of the Republican base. We have the old school Republicans, okay? And 95% of these old school Republicans have good hearts, okay? The other 5% could be rhinos, okay? Or, Democrats in rhino clothing, so to speak. The other area of the old school Republicans have to deal with education, keeping up what's going on. Are they just listening to the fake news, as Donald Trump refers to it? Are they listening to social media? Are they listening to all these areas? Okay. So again, I'm going to read this again because I want you all to understand, this is the time of separation. Again, this is in the appendix of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one's people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. So, MAGA. MAGA is the separation. MAGA is bringing out the fraud. MAGA is utilizing anything and everything to bring forth this change. Okay. And many of us don't like it. Okay. Many of us. Okay. The reason we don't like it is because we don't know the end game. And none of us really know the end game. There's a lot of people out there on social media predicting this and predicting that. We have, other areas where we're looking toward the future, but we don't understand what the future holds. Okay. Because again, we're not in tune with what's happening, not just within our country, but within the structure of governments around the earth, so to speak. And then again, that let it be a flat earth or a round earth. Okay. We'll throw it out there too. When we look at it from the transparency part, okay, the government itself is collapsing as we know it and as we see it. And when I say it's collapsing, the biggest part of the government that's collapsing is the monetary system. Okay. The monetary system is what holds most countries together. Okay. Now, when we look at it from a standpoint of our country, okay, at one point we went ahead and we printed our own money. We had gold and silver backing our economy. And then as things changed, okay, 1913, and then again in 1913, what took place was the Federal Reserve was reinstated. And the Federal Reserve has never been part of our original government. It's a separate corporation owned by other people in other countries. That's right. And if you don't know that, then this might be news to you, and it might be hard news for you to understand. But the Federal Reserve, who prints our money, charges our country an interest rate. And that interest rate is paid through taxation without representation. So all of our taxes go into this Federal Reserve system. And that's why we have what we refer to as a national debt, because we don't have a true gold back, silver back, acid backed dollar presently. Okay. Everything that we have is basically a promissory note. So when you look at your dollars, it's a note, it's a promissory note. And this promissory note is where? This promissory note is part of a trust which was initiated against each living man, woman, son, and daughter at the time of birth. Okay. So in 1933, when the Security Act came into effect, that's when this trust really took strength and started using what we refer to as a credit debit system. Okay. No longer an asset backed currency. Okay. So we have things basically in the air, credit and debit, just floating around, credit and debit. Okay. You go to the bank, you get credit. Okay, even though you put that credit note in there, you get credit. Okay, it just continues. When you pay your notes to your electric company, when you go down to Walmart, when you go down to Home Depot, when you pay the dog catcher, whatever it may be, those are credit debit notes. Okay, so what controls those credit debit notes? It's not the American people. Okay, it's the Federal Reserve. Now, recently, okay, within the last decade, the Treasury has been moved into that position as we go through this change of this decade. Now, the Treasury is actually behind the scenes presently, okay? They have the power, but they haven't shut down the Federal Reserve yet, okay? And as we all know, there was a new individual appointed to oversee that, okay? Now, as this treasury starts taking place, the monies that were utilized, credit debit, not real actual gold acid backed currency, was shipped overseas, okay, to help, different countries, to help different areas of venue that might have had hurricanes or, crisis or, maybe we're in a war, okay? All these things were taking place. Well, the problem with credit debit is because it's not solid, okay? It isn't like you can, move, 100, tons of gold easy. But within the credit debit system, you just push a wire and boom, it's sent and it takes a few, moments to get there, but it gets there. This money was utilized within the Democratic and Republican parties, okay? It was funneled back into those who would help maintain the British rule over our country. Wait a minute, you're saying Britain? Yes, we're saying Britain. Britain has maintained control over most of the United States corporation. Okay. At times prior to the United States corporation being instituted in 1871, the United States of America was still being punched by Britain. Okay. Most of the American people didn't know this. And a lot of this has just resurfaced again, because again, we're in the decade of change. We're in the decade of truth, the awakening in the aspect of spirituality versus satanic. We're in this whole new paradigm and a shift. And so when we look at our truths, and back to the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Creator, God, one God, our belief system, this country was founded upon. Life. Life takes place at the moment of conception. Liberty, to have the ability to make your own decisions, to do as you please as long as you don't hurt others. Mother Earth, there's no injury. And the pursuit of happiness. All of us have a different form of happiness. We might agree, we might disagree. We might have areas there that are strong and areas there that are weak, but we all have a certain belief system, okay? So as we look forward and we go into this areas, we have to take into consideration that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on the such principles and organizing its powers in such form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay? So, when we're looking at this, MAGA is creating a new form of energy, a new change within the Republican Party. Okay? And it's basically going to destroy the old paradigm of the Republican Party as well as the old paradigm of the Democratic Party. Because both principles, okay, the pursuit of happiness and to have the ability to elect our officials in a manner that will make this change occur. Okay. And so when we look at the changes, we have to look at it from the aspect of transparency, the aspect of how it's going to affect us down the road as we move forward in this new paradigm shift, things of this nature. Now, as we move forward in this time frame, okay, we have June 9th coming up. We have, our local people here who are, going for certain areas and positions within the county, within the city, within the state, within the national aspect, within these two political parties that are still in existence, the old Republican Party, the old Democratic Party. But what's happened is we have the MAGA party coming in, and it's got a big, strong hold on what the outcomes will be. Now, Trump has endorsed many people, and so far he's been 100% on his endorsements when it comes to being elected. Okay. Look at Texas. Look at some of these other states around our country that have had the ability to have that endorsement change that political format within their community, within their state. Now, some of us, okay, might not like Donald Trump's choices, but you got to remember, okay, Donald Trump is just the figurehead of this military operation that is going on today, presently. It's been going on for numerous years to restore our country back to who? To we the people. That's where we're at. That's where we're looking to be at the end of this decade, is to have all these changes, which each and every one of you have probably prayed about, have probably been upset about, who have, spoke to your family, your neighbors of some issue within the community because of the actions of politicians, for instance, putting a data center in, whatever the case may be. These changes are going to be detrimental as we look in the future. Okay. Well, who is behind Donald Trump? Where are these changes coming from? These changes are coming from a military operation. Okay. Now, when we look at the Q movement, those of you who are aware of who Q is, okay, Q is a psyop of information that was published many years ago, formatting what has been transpiring today in the political realm. In other words, it was like a looking glass projection of the future. Within this, there was over right around, I believe, 35 times within the Q drops that it said, trust the plan. Trust the plan. Okay. We don't have to know it. We have to trust it. It's kind of like a spiritual movement. Okay. We have to have faith to create our belief to trust in God. Some of us just go off of faith, knowing God is there, knowing God is going to give us whatever we can have, whatever we can take, because he knows that we can handle it. And that's how we have to look at the plan. The plan. Okay? The plan's not a simple plan. Because again, we're looking at over a century of corruption from overseas involvement in our country. Look at it from the standpoint of corruption within your own communities. Back in the days, I remember growing up and I couldn't go into some stores that had no Indians. no blacks where I grew up. Okay. You couldn't drink out of the same water fountain, couldn't go to the same bathroom. These things have been occurring to divide the American people through the elite of Britain to create chaos within our society. Okay. So the military has taken a view of how we have to return some of these states back to an area where a republic form of government, our true government, not democracy, okay? Because again, we have to remember, okay, within democracy, and democracy isn't in the Constitution. Where do you fit in the aspect of democracy? As one of we the people of the republic form of government, okay, there's no taxes without representation. No more tax money being sent overseas and are funneled back to the Democrats and the Rhino Republicans to cover up their corruption and scandals. There's a new banking system, no longer the Federal Reserve owned by the elite satanic empire under British control. There's going to be lower prices on everything, the tariff money being distributed. There's not going to be an IRS. The choice is for us to make. Change is not change without change. And we have to welcome the new United States of America, because as we welcome it within our faith, within our understanding, then we're going to have the ability to see the change, to be part of the change. And so when Trump goes out there and he initiates, hey, this is who I'm going to support, and we don't like it, just going to have to bite the bullet. Sometimes we don't like the things that come to us that God's placed in front of us. But we bite the bullet and we lean on God. So that's what I'm asking each and every one of you, is to lean on the plan, God's plan. God's already won this battle. We just have to walk through the door. Okay? And as we walk through the door, it's going to be something that we are unexpected to do, because again, our ego comes in. Oh, well, I don't like that person. That person done this before. That person done that before. And, I can't believe, Trump went ahead and, supported this person. Well, let me give you a few options, maybe why he's done this in some areas. Let it be South Carolina, let it be Florida, let it be across the nation in Montana. Okay. There's a lot of corruption in politics. That I'm sure we all can agree on. Doesn't matter if it's at a local level, state level, or national level. There's a lot of corruption. And during this military operation, there have been many people taken out of their content of who they represent. Okay. They've been eliminated, so to speak. And some haven't, but many have. And as they've been eliminated, doppelgangers have been in, playing the role. Some of you might have seen some of the, congressmen and Senate people that are giving talks and they're wearing a mask, and you can see the mask. It's down here flopping, in their area here, or up in this area in the nose area or the ears. It's loose and it doesn't stick, or even up as high as the forehead. Their eyes don't seem to look the same. All this is transpiring, okay? When we look at it from the standpoint of why, is because we don't want chaos. We're at a civil war right now in our country. And civil war is a political war. It's an information war. And within this information, we're given nits and bits that want to pull us away from the plan. Because our ego says, hey, I don't care what Donald Trump says. We're going to do this. Well, when Donald Trump recognizes and endorses somebody, it's because they're already in the plan. They're already accepting to do whatever it is that he asks to get it done for our country, to be able to restore what our country has lost for over a century. Okay. So when we look at it from the standpoint of the governor, the governor has the same ability as the president, gets to veto. That's huge. Okay. The governor gets to push the plan to make sure that the people within the political party that that governor represents, and in most cases should hold the majority within their state, can address the plan to make the plan come to fruition. Okay. The plan is no different than what we have to do in some of our changes in the way our system was set up. Presently, you could be born in another country and be a U.S. citizen, having dual citizenship, and be a governor, be an attorney general. Now, when we look at that concept, it's a bad concept because, again, the allegiance to our country can be challenged. Even though that person might say, hey, I'm an American, blah, rah, rah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's how countries get indoctrinated into falsehood. Think of all the people presently that are serving, okay, in the political realms that are from different countries. They bring their belief system from that country once they're elected and try to destroy our system, God's system. Okay. Unalienable rights that God bestowed upon us, just like it refers to in the Declaration of Independence. Look at what's happening with New York. Look what's happening in Minneapolis. Look what's happening in California. Look what's happening just in Georgia. Okay. Look what's happening here in South Carolina. We have to take the opportunity to recognize within ourselves that it's not about me right now. It's about trusting God's plan, trusting the plan to restore our country back to a republic form of government, to give you, the people, the voice. That's one of the main things that Trump said when he came into the office the first time. I'm giving it back to you, the people. Trust the plan. Okay. So we might not like the governor that was just, in here in South Carolina. We might not like the lieutenant governor. But if Trump and the military have initiated the plan and they're a part of that plan, we have to trust that plan. Doesn't mean that we're going to know everything. The only thing we're going to know and the only thing we're going to see are bits and pieces and the outcome. And the outcome is the golden era. And when I say the golden era, I mean that. Okay. I've been teaching for 40 years now on government and corruption, and I've seen so much, and I've been part of a lot of change. And when I see what's taken place today with the doubt, the insecurities that many people have, it's not because they don't believe things can change. It's because their ego won't let it happen. You know, I attended this pastors event here in Hampton County here this week. Okay, the Ninth Amendment Party is a church as well. Just so you know, we have our own church registered out of the state of Washington, and it's the people's church. It's the church for the people, the unalienable rights that God bestowed upon us. And when they asked me, because they went around the room and they, introduce yourself, I introduced myself as the Ninth Amendment Party. Okay. And technically, according to the statutory provisions, I'm a pastor in that aspect. And at the same time, I just basically said, hey, I bring into the truth of God versus government and the differences. Because God gave us rights, unalienable rights that nobody can take away from us. And what did government do? Government gave us privileges. So are you going to go with the unalienable rights of the Declaration of Independence talks about that God gave us? Or are you going to go through government with privileges? That's what we're fighting. That's what we're going back to. We're going back to that aspect of God and country. Are you going to be a part of that? Are you going to choose not to go with the plan? Because everybody who chooses not to go with the plan puts a little speed bump in front of the next plan that needs to come out. And pretty soon, you're going to have so many speed bumps that it's not going to be an easy momentum for South Carolina or other states to go back to a republic form of government where there are no taxes, where there are no educational systems that are pushing transgenderism. You're not going to be able to truly affect what's in your heart for the generations that are going to come after us. We're all part of this apex of change, you know? And like my shirt says, if you don't like Trump, you don't like me probably, okay? I'm just telling you, you know? It took me a while to understand really what was transpiring when all this stuff started looking, towards what was going on in, prior like 2010, right in that area. And I started, working with people from around the country that were in different areas of truth, exposing things. And as we got a little closer and we found out that Trump was going to be the spokesperson for this change, it made a lot of sense. Because in 2010, that was one of the very first times the government actually let you put a poll out to see what you wanted to see done. And we put a poll out at the government's website on the aspect of winding up. What is winding up? Well, the winding up process is the bankruptcy of our country. The United States Inc. Incorporated, 1871. And when I put that out there, my other partner, Michael James Anthony, who's passed away now, he was taken out by a dew weapon by the government. And we put that out there, and people really didn't know what it meant, winding up. Well, the plan is this winding up process, okay? Each and every man and woman, son and daughter that was born in this country, whose parents were born in this country, okay, all have this trust. And this trust of credit debit system is sitting in this credit debit bank, like a credit union, so to speak. Okay. And this bank is in Puerto Rico, just so you know. But it's credit debit. It's not real physical gold, silver backed notes. Okay. They're not greenbacks as we used to call them back in the early days. Credit debit notes. And these notes are part of this change that's going to be taking place. And as we move into this direction of the plan, this credit debit system that has robbed each and every one of us is going to be condensed into real asset backed style currency through that credit debit system. And it's going to be returned back to each and every one of you. What? I'm going to get something back? I mean, I've been getting took for how long? That's what's transpiring on not just the American soil, but across the soils around every country that is in this Federal Reserve banking system. Now, what transpired within that system, and again, this is all part of the plan. The economic situation is the biggest part of the plan. Okay? Sovereignty of the country, sovereignty of the state, sovereignty within the county, sovereignty within the city and town, let it be incorporated or unincorporated. Each and every one of you should have the ability to do as you see fit with the property you have in your possession that you own without being told how to do it, how to maintain it, how to do whatever, needs to be done. Presently, we thought, oh, well, building codes were the positive way. Well, building codes came from the United Nations agenda, just so you know, to control, to create revenue of credit debit. Because again, that's what they promised each county in 1967 is the revenue generated through credit debit. Okay. As we look at the system itself, it's slowly, slowly, slowly deteriorating. Okay. It's moving away from the system that we all been a part of in our lifetime. Basel compliance is part of the system of change that Donald Trump is pushing, that the military is in charge of. Basel compliance forced the banking system, the cartels, okay, because that's really what they are. They're part of the Federal Reserve cartel system, okay? Force them to say, you know what? We no longer are going to give you the ability to take Bobby's money, this $100 that she deposited today, and loan out $99 of her money. Because you're riding the back of Bonnie now, or Bobby, or Lydia, or Paula, or Alicia, or Motorola, whoever Motorola Moto is, and for anybody else out there, okay? Basel compliance said, you know what? We want you to have asset-backed currency and utilize your own money to lend out. So presently, this started back in the early time of this 2012 time where things started moving in that direction. Presently, today, there's over 205 countries whose banks are Basel compliance that can do this because there's a system running side by side. The quantum financial system, some of you may have heard of it. And then we have the Federal Reserve, the old banking system, the corrupt banking system. Well, in this system, okay, there is the opportunity to be corrupt. In this system, there's the opportunity to have everything tracked where no corruption can occur. In other words, this money that comes back into the politicians' hands that are destroying the local communities and states in our nation can't occur. This money that the drug dealers from, All these different cartels from Mexico to Colombia to Russia to Japan. I mean, everybody has a drug cartel. Can't utilize money because now they know where this money comes from as this progression of change takes place within our economic system. Is that right? Do I want people knowing where my money is? It isn't so much where I want people to know, but I ain't doing anything wrong. So, you know what? If the government wants to track my money to make sure that my money doesn't end up in the hands of somebody that's doing illicit crimes or part of a sex trafficking ring or part of a drug cartel, I'm okay with that. And I think most of you are too. Okay. Change is not change without change. We're going to have to look at the financial system in a whole different way. And that's all part of this plan. It's all part of Trump putting these individuals who he endorses to create this plan so we can be ahead of the game versus struggling within the game. It's like taking a basketball and letting all the air out. Can't dribble down the court very well. Well, right now, we need to dribble down the court. We need to be able to make that layup or that 3-point shot. We need to score a touchdown. We need to hit a home run. And it's trusting the plan. Okay? We have to trust the plan. Now, when we look at the economic system, then we also have to look at the health system. The health system itself is broken. The plan brings forth a new entire health system. Some of you might be aware of the terminology med beds. That's all part of the plan to be able to do away with disease. Where do you think disease mostly comes from? It comes from these companies that are in bed with the pharmaceuticals. And where do you think the pharmaceutical companies come from? They were in bed with those who are, for the most part, in control of the oil. The bad people who were in control of oil. Prior to the pharmaceutical companies and oil, we had what we refer to in our, area of, Native American history as the medicine man, medicine woman who used herbs. Maybe your grandparents used herbs, if you had something wrong, they gave you some plant and you just, you dealt with it. It might not have tasted good or it might have been good, who knows? But you dealt with it and you got well. No different than, a good bowl of chicken soup. Okay. Certain herbs are good for you. Okay. Certain herbs have a potential of healing many diseases. But the pharmaceutical companies didn't want that. So they did away with the herbalist. Now, my wife, Carla's mom, she had one of the very first health food stores in the state of Wyoming. She was like an entrepreneur, Miss Billy. She's passed away now, but she was ahead of her game. She had doctors come to her. She had all sorts of people come to her for advice. It was because she was raised old school. She understood the importance of herbs, herbologist. Okay. Pharmaceutical looks at the herbs and then makes a synthetic. And what is synthetic but made of oil, just so you know, and creates a pill. When we were kids and we had, any type of a form of, a headache or this or that, my grandmother would go out and get me a white willow branch and say, gnaw on this white willow branch. And so I'd gnaw on a little bit of white willow branch. Well, white willow branch in the bark is aspirin. These are changes that are going to be occurring, but with the medbed technology, it's going to be through light and frequency. So the medical field that we know today that's fighting hard, tooth and nail. Old school Republicans, rhinos, Democrats, people who are in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, the people who are supporting their elected officials. Okay. All this is going to be changing because of how Trump lays out these endorsements for the military so we can have this plan come into action. Education. Right now, our country's like, I hate to say it, but it's pretty bad when it comes to education because we've allowed foreign countries to donate and create liberal colleges and institutions and schools within our local community. Where were you? Where was the rest of the community when all this was taking place? Our country got to a point after World War II where we were just riding the high hog. And the high hog finally got slaughtered, and we're what's left. And we need to be able to take that and understand our part and our role into not paying attention. Today, come June 9th, is the time we need to pay attention. We need to use a lot of discernment. But if Trump endorses somebody, follow the plan. Because he's only going to endorse so many people. The rest of the people, make up your own minds about it. That's all I'm saying. Do whatever you need to do, make up your own mind. I'm not here to sway you to one politician or sway you to another. The only thing I'm saying is support the plan, support God's plan, support the military plan to get rid of all this anxiety that each and every one of you have, and I have, and others have, due to the way our government is being ran behind the scenes. We don't want chaos. I mean, look at France right now. My spouse and I, we were in France in 2017. I went down there for a documentary that I was in and went to this film festival they asked us to be a part of. And the documentary was about freedom. And it was about living your life where no injury occurs. And if there is an injury, that you are responsible for whatever you have to do to make that injury correct and right. When we were down there and we were going through different aspects of France, we were there in Nice, and that's where we stayed, was in Nice, because that's where the film festival was. But we traveled throughout France. And when we went to the Matisse Museum, and that's an artist, in case some of you don't know, I mean, I think a 3-year-old could do just as good as his stuff, but hey, they call it art, it's art, okay? That's all I got to say. But we're sitting there and we come out of it after we were doing ceremony and clearing a bunch of land over there where, the Colosseums were and the gladiators were killing each other. And we went over there and did prayer and just, cleared the energy, so to speak. And we were sitting down at a bench. And I think we were just sitting there for a little bit. And this lady, kind of was sitting by us and she says, "Oh, you guys must be from America." And of course, you know, I'm not your typical American, but hey, I'm the first American, so to speak, being Native American. And my wife, and she says to us, she goes, "Boy, you guys got a lot of problems over there in America." And I thought to myself, wow, what's she getting at? And pretty soon she goes, what about that Trump? Boy, he's going to destroy the country. And she went off just rattling all these terrible, terrible things about Trump and what the media had been putting out and the BBC and everybody. And I got to owe it to my wife. She looked at that lady and she says, "Excuse me." Because I was thinking it, and I was about ready to say something, but she beat me to the punch. And she says, you really need to worry about your country because you're going to be overran. You got open borders and you got, this area of Muslim energy coming in and taking over your country that aren't good people. Your rape has increased dramatically, crime has increased dramatically. All these things are occurring. You need to worry about your country. The lady wasn't very happy. She kind of like, kind of snubbed Carla. And then I kind of basically just kind of reaffirmed what Carla said. Said, you might not like Trump. That's okay. Trump has nothing to do right now with your country. He's working on our country. And you should work on your country as well. Because everything that my wife just told you is true. And you look at it today. You go on the news, you go on the internet, punch in France, you're going to see riots, 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 all by open borders, immigration, by the Muslim community. And it's destroying the country of France. The original French people of France didn't come out during the daytime, hardly at all. They were afraid to come out. And how do I know that? It's because I spoke to them in the evening. Carla and I, we'd go out, it'd be 11:30 their time at night. And that's about when people started coming out, the real true French people. And we would go and we'd go sit down and we'd have us ice cream or get us some soda, some good stuff, you know, some good vegetables, good food, whatever the case may be. We'd go out for our walk and we'd talk to people. And the biggest thing that everybody said that were true French people that lived in France was they were afraid to come out in the daytime. Look at New York. Look at Chicago. Look at New Orleans. Look at Hampton County. There's people who are afraid to come out at night here locally. When I went to this pastors forum here this week, Sheriff Russell, I didn't know much about him. And I'd heard in the community different things. And so I went and I listened. And one of the biggest things that I learned here in this county is that since he took office, crime has dramatically come down. We're talking huge percentages, not just, 1 or 2%. We're talking double digits. And then he even told me, what? The biggest reason why crime came down in this community was because he got strong with the youth. Our little community here has a lot of drive-by shootings, a lot of gang violence, all this stuff. And he came out and he said, this is what we've been doing to help our community. Okay. And when he did that, he had a little PowerPoint and he basically said, hey, this is what we're doing to help this community. Okay. And since he's been there, he's been doing these forums. So this was his 4th year of a forum for the local community, which I thought was really interesting. Because again, when we look at it from a standpoint, he wanted to have a transformation within his community. Okay. He wanted to have better communication with the people so they can trust law enforcement. He wanted to have a partnering with the pastors of this community because who's better to know the community than the pastors and their congregation? If little Johnny's causing trouble, somebody in that church knows little Johnny. Okay. And what happens is these individuals within the communities of this church, since he started his pastor forum, let their pastor know what's going on. And then this pastor, if this person's in a bad situation lets law enforcement know. Okay. Now, some people might say, oh, they're just snitching. Okay. But they're looking at it to help the community. They're looking to protect the community. As an example, here recently, within this last month, they have these traffic stops where they put up roadblocks and they check for driver's license and insurance and all that stuff. And you know how I feel about all that. Hopefully you do. Okay. I believe we have the right to travel and blah, 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 but this is what they're doing. Okay. And he said there was a car that pulled up. And when they asked for the IDs of these kids, their names were on a list. What kind of list? Well, a list that, hey, these are potential people that could be causing some trouble. And so when they looked into the car, the passenger had a semi-automatic with a 100-round drum in between his legs. And the driver had a pistol with like a 30-round run in between his. They were on the way to do a drive-by shooting. This was prevented. Okay. So Sheriff Russell, he's got a plan. He's got a plan to make Hampton County safer. Is it going to happen overnight? No. But he has a plan. And the people here are going to support that plan. I truly believe he'll be reelected. Okay. Why am I bringing this up? The main reason is because we have a lot of challenges as the general population here in our communities, within our state and within our nation. And our safety and our health are the biggest areas that we have to really look at as we move forward. Because again, some people might not be able to take what's going to happen. When all this information comes out that I've shared with you already, doppelgangers and trafficking and the financial system and the military plan, and all this is made public, because it will be, some people aren't going to be able to handle it. Some people believe the suicide rate will increase dramatically because people won't be able to handle the plan, the truth. So when we look at it from that standpoint, we have to look at it from a standpoint of, we already know that candidates, okay, who are running here in our state, okay, we already know that the lieutenant governor leads the polls. As soon as she got the nomination, she took over the polls. That tells me that MAGA is strong here in South Carolina. Now, as we have the Attorney General, we have Stumbo, we have Pasco and Goldfinch is leading the polls. Okay. When we look at it from the standpoint of the Commissioner of Ag, which is very important, because think, who is going to do best as a Commissioner of Ag for agriculture? We don't want a bunch of Monsanto stuff. We don't want a bunch of food poisoning. We don't want a bunch of herbicides that are going to affect us, all this kind of stuff. We have Jeremy Cannon, who's a business owner and a farmer. We have Danny Ford, who's a farm owner and, he's a football coach. We have Cody Simpson, who's the state director of farm service. And we have Fred West, who's the director of market development at the Department of Agriculture. So he's already there. Who is the best person for that position? You'll have to do your research if you haven't done it already. Okay. But just recognize when you do that research, take into consideration who's already in and who's already trying to create change if it needs it. Okay. Now, when we look at it from the Senate standpoint, okay, they have old Lindsey Graham leading, okay? I really don't believe that. I think that's a falsehood and possibly, and I can't prove this at this moment, but possibly Lindsey Graham could have a doppelganger playing Lindsey Graham. Okay. He could have somebody in that position wearing a mask, playing him and playing the role. If he gets reelected, which I would be very shocked, that would be the only reason why he would be reelected. Now, Mark Lynch is next. He's at like 36%. So he's pretty solid. But there's a few things that come out on Mark Lynch that are kind of questionable. So again, how's it going to lay out? We don't know. Okay. Again, you're going to have to do your discernment to look at things. And so when we look at the governor, that's our main concern. At least that's mine. Because again, that's part of the plan. Now, when you look at your local areas, okay, our local communities, who has the plan? I mean, really a plan. We have people out there that are, running for office that say, hey, this is what's wrong. But they really don't give you a plan of how to fix it. They tell you all the bad things that are occurring, but they don't share how they're going to fix it. Just send me to Washington and I'll fix it. That doesn't make any sense to me. To be a successful candidate during this transition, you have to have a plan or be part of the plan. And if you're not in either of those two positions, you shouldn't be elected. It's going to hurt the local economy, it's going to hurt the state economy, and it's going to hurt the national economy. So, what areas are we going to identify and what solutions are behind the plan that these candidates are running? Are there victims of these candidate plans? Some of these candidates are like, hey, data center, rah, 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 rah. Okay. And then we have to look at, are they going to be just sucking up the water and leaving the community as soon as they're done doing all their mysterious stuff? And next thing you know, you got poison in the water? Or are they going to be truthful and come out and say, we have a data center that we've put together that doesn't require water? Yeah. I was kind of surprised to hear that myself. My spouse, she's like, hey, BT, check this out. This guy owns data centers. He creates them. And he says there's no need for water. And these companies that are saying there's a need for water aren't there to create positive energies. They're there to destroy the communities. And if any of you need to check that out, I have it on our Signal group. And if you're not part of our Signal group, join up and we'll put you on it and you can see that. And those of you who are on our Signal group, go on. I put it on. I think I put it on today, didn't I, huh? So, look at it. Listen. I mean, this guy makes them. Who better to know than the expert? So there's all these things that are occurring. We have to look at it as an aspect of who's being targeted by these electors that we're putting in these positions. Okay. And when I mean targeted, are they just going to help up north, Greenville, bigger cities? Are they going to forget about us in the rural communities? Because right now, I think the rural communities are being targeted. We're not getting the funding that all these big cities are getting. And what we're getting isn't very much, according to what I've been told by people who are receiving the monies here locally, here in our county. As an example, our roads, our county roads, our dump. There's like 5 pieces of equipment that no longer are working to have an efficient dump or a county road maintenance crew. Why is that? Because the county doesn't want to spend the money because they're spending the money somewhere else or they're putting it in their pockets. Hampton County hasn't been in the most positive news for a number of years. Maybe that's why Spirit brought Carla and I here to this community and to this state, is to bring out some of this information for you to discern, for you to look at within your own community, to be able to adjust our strategies as people in the community. We have to be able to maneuver around these political rhinos, bad people. We have to be able to understand how we can come out in the back door and come around them, fix things for the community. When we lived in Florida, one of the biggest things that I think we helped get accomplished, there was two, but one of the biggest things was the stopping of the pride parades in the public forum. Where men dress half naked and show their stuff in public, or women dress pretty much naked and show their stuff in public, all in front of little kids, all this kind of stuff, big parade. And again, this is supposed to be Pride Month. When they said they wanted to have it stopped, I met with some people. I said, well, you can do this. This is what I would suggest. And what I suggested, and it got back, is they went ahead and they put a high dollar signal price on what it would cost to have the police there. So it was out of reach for them to be able to grab. So they got the ACLU, which is like the Southern Poverty Law Center, not really good, taking back money funneled from the taxpayers back into corrupt hands, supporting things that are not supposed to be supported. And they filed suit against Naples City. Said, hey, we're suing you guys because we have the right. We have our First Amendment right to free speech, to let our schlong hang. I'm telling you, people. And so they sued them. And I was talking to the people that were, working with the city, and they were like, BT, we don't know what we're going to do. I said, yeah, this is what you're going to do. I says, your guys are going to lose in the federal court the first round. Just the way the system is designed. But the second round in the appellate is where you'll win if you follow these directions. And so I gave them the directions. Did I follow up on the directions? No. Because again, this is something that they had to deal with once they had the information, once they do their own discernment, once they look at who they are. And they followed them. And the city was like, man, we ain't got money for the appeal. What do we lose? We're going to have to pay all this money. God's won the battle, people. God's won the battle. And so through the appeal process on a federal level, ACLU lost the case. And now that's a federal case that can be used in any state to prevent young children seeing other people's privates out in the public. Now that's God working for you. Okay? That's case precedent around our nation now. That's how important that is. Another area too is looking at it from the standpoint of fluoride. We got the fluoride taken out of the whole state in the water systems. Does your city use fluoride in your water? If it does, you need to get it taken out because it's hurting the pituitary gland, which is your intuition, your third eye, one would say, connected to source, connected to creator, connected to God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Okay. Many cities still utilize fluoride, just so you know. But if it's not, good. And if it's not being used, what are they utilizing? That's another question. Because they could be putting something very similar other than fluoride that does the same thing, just has a different name. Okay. We have to adjust our strategies. We have to be able to respond. We have to be able to listen. We have to be able to identify, and we have to be able to be open enough to help others. And that's what we're here for. So, again, we might not like everything, but let me go ahead and just share this really with you real quick, okay? I'm going to go ahead and open up a file, and then I'm just going to kind of close out with this file. And then we can open it up for discussion, okay, people? Let me get everything here. Okay, share. There we go, sharing that. All right, so hopefully all you can see this, okay? MAGA is the new Republican. Rhinos are the old Democrats, and Democrats are the new communists. Open your eyes, question everything, and think for yourself, okay? The two-party system is no longer. We have to trust the plan, know that God's won this battle, and continue down the path where this plan comes to fruition to bless each and every one of us through this golden era of age and through the ability to recognize that we need to kick all the Democrats out of the Republican Party, all the rhinos. Okay. Do you have a Republican person in your community that really should be a Democrat, but he's running on a Republican ticket? Food for thought. The rhinos. Okay. And there's a lot more. You know, they're going to be dismantled. All this stuff is taking place. And again, remember, people, that God is in control of every situation. Okay. God, there's no need to panic. Okay. No need to panic. Just know the battle's been won. Trust the plan and allow yourself to not be in that area no more. You know, allow yourself to stop being in that position of where you're at. Okay. Allow yourself to recognize if you don't like Trump, then you probably won't like me either. Okay. And I'm okay with that. Okay. I'm okay if you don't trust the plan. It's up to each and every one of you to trust and discern. And I'm okay with it because I know there's going to be enough of us who trust the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for discussion. I'm going to go ahead and read the chat here. I haven't been able to follow up on the chat here. Let me just kind of look at it real quick and then We'll get back to this. Okay. Yes, crashing of the monetary system is part of the plan. Yes, it is. Okay. Yes, the ACLU definitely helped secure the Satanist program. Yes, they did. I'm glad there's no fluoride over there in Barnwell. Thank you, Bonnie. There's a lot of things here that people are unaware of. And again, it's not because they're not listening, it's because our thoughts and our surroundings and our environment has come to a point where many of us just kind of buried your head in the sand. But now you got it pulled out. You're no longer the sheeple in distress. You're the eagle flying high. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Mr. Motorola Moto, whoever you are. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask. And if you can't, that's okay. I'll give you a little bit of time. All right. Seems like Mr. Motorola Muto is unable to. We'll go ahead and go to Alicia. Alicia, if you have any questions or want to say anything, or feel free to unmute and ask. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I do have something I want to say. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep. Well, we're hearing you. We're hearing you really good, Alicia. Go
All
ahead.
right, good. It's not so much a question, but am aware of a lot of things going on, and it's good to know we don't have any fluoride. I have well water, so I don't ever think about fluoride out here in the country. However, I do worry, but maybe I shouldn't say worry about the things I see in the sky. There's some dirigible looking objects that fly around. I was trying to get them on my phone, and I have an iPhone. I cannot take pictures of them. I can focus right on it, and it looks like it is not there.
When we look at things in the sky, and I'll touch base on this. I mean, I've been part of the UFO phenomenon since I was, a young man. And the reason why is because I seen a UFO and I seen a couple aliens and so forth. And I wasn't the only one. There was about 11 of us kids who seen the same thing. And we, told our scoutmaster. And she took us to the airport, and the airport confirmed what we had seen in the air, as well as the military come and talk to us kids later. There's a lot of different crafts in the air. Some have a cloaking device, which basically makes it hard for them to see. But at the same time, in different lights, when I say sunlight, sometimes the cloaking device malfunctions and you can see an outline or you can see certain things. I mean, when we were living in Florida, we seen numerous UFOs. We seen one that almost looked like an octopus, had tentacles coming down, and it was almost see-through. And when you noticed it, those tentacles moved towards you. Okay. And, we've seen several spears, we've seen triangular, we've seen all sorts, but we have to understand that some of those are ours, American made. Okay. Some of those are Russian made. Technology is way above what the common man and woman understands when it comes to technology dealing with aircrafts. Okay. When I lived in New Mexico, and that's where my family's from, and my uncle was in the Air Force, and he shared a lot of information with us. But the most information that I got when we were living in New Mexico isn't the fact that there was UFOs or Roswell, the crash there, and ant people and aliens living underground and all this stuff that is evident. Where we lived in Sandia Heights, there was a community of probably about 60 homes. And most of these homes were retired Air Force people. Okay. And so we bought up in that area because it was a nice community and we felt secure and safe. And we had a really nice home. And we had an individual come, and welcome us to the community. And he says, I heard you was American Indian and, I'd like to talk to you about some stuff. And so we went over to his house for dinner, my wife and I, and sat down and visited with him and his wife. And we got done with dinner and, having a cup of coffee and just visited and having a little pound cake. And he says, BT, I want to show you something. So he takes me back into this room, which had a door on it like a safe. I mean, like a bank safe. Put his thumb on it. He did all sorts of stuff to get this door to open. And when he opened it, inside was all this computer technology equipment. And this guy was the actual person who invented the GPS system for the military. Okay. Satellite technology, the whole works from, opening to shut. He invented it. And he had all this equipment that he had designed inside this room. And he told me, he said, I want you to look at that piece of equipment and look at the logo that's on it. Well, the logo that was on it is the same logo for our space program, just so you know. He started developing this stuff in the 60s and 70s. Okay. So think of the knowledge this man had. And he shared with me some of the most incredible stories dealing with UFO technology that our country has. And it's all been re engineered through crashes of UFOs that were not of other countries. You know, like he would say, the Anunnaki, like he would say, the Palladians, all these different high energy individuals who are not of our 3D dimension that we're aware of. So, yeah, when you see those types of things, it's very difficult to get a picture. Not all are reptilians, just so you know, not all are reptilians. There's good aliens and there's bad aliens, just like, you know, Grizzly Adams said, there's good and bad in all kind. Same with aliens. Okay. The good aliens are helping our country develop certain technology. We've had connection with aliens since Truman, just so you guys know. Presidents have sat down with aliens. Okay. When Trump put all this information out to be disclosed to the American people here recently, most people were like, whoa, we're going to get the real deal now. Because there's many people like you, Alicia, and me, and others who see these things and question what's going on. Well, the Central Intelligence Agency stole that information, wouldn't let it get out. They went to the office and took it. That just kind of makes you wonder why. Control. If the American people, as well as it being let out to the world, so to speak, knew for a fact what was taking place, the elite wouldn't have the control that they do. Because we're in a spiritual battle. This is some that, some of you might have a hard time understanding and believing. The spiritual battle isn't of our country or other countries being free and sovereign. The spiritual battle is of the good aliens and the bad aliens who want to control the earth. Okay. good and bad, control the earth. Because we've been in slavery, servitude to the bad reptilians, the Gracos, the fallen angels, one would say, since the beginning of time. And now the Palladians, the good ones, the good angels, are battling to bring us back to who we are meant to be, sons and daughters of Creator, free men and women, sovereignty. That's where we're at. We think the battle's here, battle's above us. We're just parts and pieces of the battle. So that's a whole other episode we can go into if you guys want to talk more about really what's happening with the fallen angels and the good angels in the battle. Okay. That's another episode. Anyway, I hope I answered your question, Alicia. We'll move on to Paula. Paula, do you have anything to say or? Okay, we'll let Paula go. Thank you, Paula. Bobby, anything for Miss Bobby? Okay. Miss Bonnie. I know Miss Bonnie's always got something to say. So, Miss Bonnie, what do you got to say to this evening?
Yeah, I don't know why everybody's so shy. Don't want to talk. They should be like me and talk all the time.
Well,
But
I always enjoy listening to what you have to say. So slap me around, kick me, whatever you got to do. This, what do you got to say, Bonnie?
well, I knew there was a military operation, and I know that Trump is part of the military operation, but I never knew that they delegated people to do certain jobs, and that Trump is going to tell us in a certain way that we don't know about this person that's going to do this job. I never knew that until you just said it.
Yeah.
If you'd have told me that about a year and a half ago, that would have helped. Hey,
hang on. Do I need to get a spanking? Carla, get over here and give me a spanking.
yeah, I
Uh,
should have. Cause see, I could have been warning people all this time.
well, and again, it's all about timing. It really is, Bonnie, and some of this stuff, I have to just kind of sit on it, and wait for that right timing when Spirit says, "Hey, BT, now you can talk about it. Now you can go ahead because we're at the end game of the movie, so to speak. We've done eating all the popcorn, we've done had all the Skittles, we've all had all the Snicker bars and soda drinks and all that kind of stuff, and we're like, wait a minute here, we're on the end of where they're rolling the credits. That's how close we are to this game. Okay, we're at that end game of the rolling of the credits, and sometimes I'm given this information through other people or discernment or whatever the case may be, and I have to sit on it because people just aren't ready for it. And I ain't saying that you weren't ready for it a year and a half ago. I'm just
Yeah.
saying when Spirit tells me to shut up, which is hard, I love to talk too. I got to just shut up. And one of the blessings that I have is Carla. Carla keeps me in that because man, there's times I want to say something. Carla's like,
She tells you when to shut up.
oh yeah, she lets me know, BT, Spirit hasn't told you yet to, because she'll ask me, has Spirit told you to say something yet? And I'm like, no. And she says, well, you can't let it go. And that's the beautiful part of having a wonderful partner and my best friend and best love and all that kind of stuff. But they keep me in check. She keeps me in check. And again, just like Charlie Ward, a good friend of mine, there's things that he can't say that he wants to say, and he has to sit on it too until that time comes where he's able to say it. And that's one of the things that, we have to recognize within a lot of these people who've been out there in the social media aspect. Okay. Yes, there's a lot of people out there who's, they predict, oh yeah, this is going to happen on this date. I tell you what, I think some of these people, they got good intentions, don't get me wrong, but a lot of
Mhm.
that's ego. Hey, Charlie never says a date. I never say a date. Most people who are, non-ego related people aren't going to give you a date because nobody knows. The only people who know is the military, the people who are in charge of what's taking place around the globe, so to speak, or the flat earth, whatever you believe. But that's just the way it is. And so we have to understand, okay? And when I say understand, most people don't realize that means standing under, okay? When you understand, you're standing under the military, okay? We have to stand under the military, let them do their work and support them and support who they have in front, which is Donald Trump, and support who he supports because there's a reason. We might not like it, but there's a reason for that support. Okay. So thank you, Bonnie.
I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
All right, so you were talking about the money system being transferred over
Mm-hmm.
to digital,
Right.
and that they can keep up with what everybody's doing. So does that mean that so they can see what we're doing, but they can't make any changes? I mean, they don't have the power to go in and take our money or
The,
turn
the,
off
the,
our money.
the only way they're going to do anything like that is if you're doing nefarious stuff. And they're not just going to go in and shut you down. They're going to come through a legal process, a lawful process. In other words, they're going to have enough evidence showing that, hey, Bonnie just bought a kilo of whatever. You know, Bonnie's been down there picking up, what do they call those bags floating? Groupers, yeah, groupers in the water.
Well, no.
But no, they're not gonna. No, it's just to be able to, when a red flag goes up, they're able to see it.
Right. Well, that's a good thing.
And yeah, I mean, I have no problem, them, looking at money transfers, especially over certain amounts. I'm not talking, $500, $10,000. I'm talking, look at the cartels. We're talking millions of dollars being funneled to LLCs and, all these different organizations. And, those are the things that they're going to be tracking. For the people who are small level people who don't move a lot of money,
So
you're not going to have to worry about anything.
we won't need those anymore after that
Correct.
because they're going to catch it all.
Oh yeah, they're going to have they know. It's just like when Trump came out, I want to say 22, 23, 24. No, actually, I think it was right at towards the end of 2020, right before the Biden got in, the fake Biden. Okay. That's another story. Anyway, but he said we have all the information on all the governors who have been working with China. We know it all. We have it all.
Mm.
Okay. They have so much information on people. I remember when they first started doing the indictments, and I saw the first time it ever came out, and it was like 60 some thousand indictments, around our nation. Okay. And I was like, man, 60,000? And then a little while later, it was up to like 200 and some thousand. And I think the last time I looked, it was, what was it, on? Like 360,000 indictments. Those are all the individuals who have been robbing and doing nefarious things in each and every local community throughout our country. There's 3,000 plus counties in our country. So when you break that down, there's a lot
So,
of corrupt people.
so that's just the United States so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah,
Not even including other countries.
no, that's just here in our homeland.
Oh,
Yeah. So when we look at things and we look at Guantanamo, okay, most of you know who Guantanamo is, Guantanamo Bay. When when Global Earth first come out, okay, and Google Earth, excuse me, not Global, Google Earth first come out, and we was in Idaho, and my friend is like, hey, let's check out Guantanamo Bay because he had a friend who's actually, over there in the military. So we get on it, and we're looking at it. And there's just a few buildings, like, 3 or 4 buildings, hardly anything. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool, So we, zoomed in on, locations that I grew up at and been and, just did a bunch of stuff. And then we went and did it here, I don't know, I'd say when we was living in Florida. And Guantanamo Bay has it's like a city in a city now. And they've been building all these geriatric prisons and all this kind of stuff for these high level people that are going to be there. We say that there's nothing happening because we don't see it. Trust the plan. It's happening. There's people already in Guantanamo Bay that, have been executed, who have been incarcerated, who will never, be in the public view again, but their doppelganger will be in the public view. The person portraying them will be in the public view, and we won't know until it's let out. And that information will come out eventually. Okay. I believe that. And I think all of us, once we see it, and that's what I refer to as, that might be part of the whole 10 days of darkness, releasing that information to the general population. So, anyhow, hopefully that answers your question, Bonnie.
yeah.
Mr. Melt, do you have a question? You able to speak on your phone tonight?
Am I, sir?
All right. Well, good to hear your voice, Melt.
How have you been, sir? Trust all is well.
Yes, all is well. I'm back and even stronger after my little episode there. So I feel really good and blessed.
Awesome. The Lord is good, sir.
Yes.
Well, so I don't have any questions. I was thinking of some things to ask you, and I would ask tonight, but I told the tonight's meeting I totally forgot about. So we're just getting back from another meeting. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, BT, maybe sometime this weekend or next week, I'll reach out to you and have a little discussion if it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. And then if it's a discussion that, we need to bring out to the rest of the people in our, in our community here that we work with, we can utilize those and then, set a Zoom just for that. We'll call it the Melt Question Zoom class or something.
Sounds like a plan. So I will be unlike Miss Bonnie. Only kidding, Miss Bonnie.
I hear you.
You all have a blessed night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you too. All right, people. Well, again, BT, Ninth Amendment Party.com. God bless America. God bless each and every one of you. And just remember, we've won the battle. Trust the plan. Good night.